welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. I'm Heena Gambhir. Viewers, Iran remains on the edge as US threats loom and India is a bit concerned. India and Iran might not be strategically aligned ideologically, but the relationship is extremely crucial. It is necessary to weaken the growing influence of China in the region. Hence, New Delhi is worried about its strategic investment in the Chabahar port. Located on Iran's southeastern coast, Chabahar port is India's gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia. It offers a seaborne route that bypasses Pakistan. It can shorten transit times, reduce logistics costs compared to traditional sea routes that go through Suez Canal. It also helps counter China's influence, like I said, in the region via Gwadar port in Pakistan. Now, why are we talking about it today? Because of US President Donald Trump. After literally kidnapping Venezuelan president and taking control of the country, Trump wants to intervene in Iranian affairs. On 12th of January, Donald Trump announced 25% tariff on countries doing business with Iran. And the two-way trade, we all know, between India and Iran is quite limited. It was around $1.6 billion last year. So that's not a very big concern. The big problem, the big concern is Chabahar port. In 2018, during Trump 1.0, amid unilateral sanctions on Iran, US allowed Indian companies to continue developing Chabahar. But in September last year, Trump decided to revoke the sanction waiver. Weeks later, India was given a 6-month relief. Now, that waiver gets over in April 2026. And that is why there is this concern. The concern is what happens next. Will India withdraw from Chabahar port? Well, for now, MEA says engagement with US is continuing. Listen in.
जैसा कि आपको पता है 28 अक्टूबर 2025 को यूएस के ट्रेजरी विभाग ने एक चिट्ठी जारी की थी हम लोगों को। उस चिट्ठी में उसमें अनकंडीशनल सैंक्शंस वेवर की बारे में जानकारी थी और ये जो अनकंडीशनल वेवर है, जो सैंक्शन वेवर हमको मिला है, आपको पता है जैसे कि वो 26 अप्रैल 2026 तक वैध है। हम इस व्यवस्था पर काम करने के लिए यूएस पक्ष के साथ बातचीत कर रहे हैं।
And to discuss it, I'm joined on the broadcast by Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow ORF. We also have with us Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Mr. Prabhu Dayal, I want to begin this discussion with you. What's happening in Tehran clearly has got a strategic relevance for India, and the interest clearly is Chabahar port. Can you explain to our viewers why does it matter so much? Any kind of instability will give sleepless nights, in fact, to India. Can you explain to us why?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Now, Chabahar is strategically very important for India because, as you know, India does not have overland routes available through Pakistan to Central Asia. And Chabahar was developed with Indian assistance, the Beheshti terminal, because for us it was a way to reach Central Asia through Iran. And then, of course, our longer-term strategy was to help in developing the north-south corridor, which would lead from Chabahar port to Vladivostok and to St. Petersburg, the Russian extremes on either side. Now, the instability in Iran, coupled with US threats for sanctions, are certainly impacting our strategic interests. As you know, we have invested quite heavily in Chabahar. The cash investment is $120 million, plus there is allied investment through the Global Ports Authority. Now, if these sanctions, which the US has imposed on Iran and against which we were given a temporary waiver till the 26th 6th of April by the Trump administration. If they are put in place, then our companies have a serious problem. At the same time, our strategic interests stand to suffer because we lose this opportunity and option to go through Iran and onwards to Central Asia. So China will profit because China has access to the Gwadar port in Pakistan. In fact, China is a very key player there. And China will have access through Gwadar to ports, to places in Central Asia. Of course, China has other options also available, other routes also available. But nonetheless, the instability in Iran combined with the threat of US sanctions is impacting our strategic interests in a very direct manner.
Well, absolutely. And these two issues clearly are a cause of concern for New Delhi. Mr. Sushant Sareen, now, many say the relationship is a necessity for India, the India-Iran relationship. Like Sir explained to us, it's a window to Afghanistan and Central Asia. There is a Pakistan angle here. There is a China factor here. Because it is important for us to also, in a way, we can't completely finish the influence of China, the way it is expanding in the region, but at least it can dilute it in some way. So with that thing in mind, how do you assess India's response to it? And also, what should India be doing at this point in time? Realistically, what are our options?
Look, we don't have too many options, and that's a simple fact. I think I don't disagree with the fact that, yes, there is a certain strategic play as far as Chabahar is concerned. But let's also look whether this is critical for our survival or is it not. And I don't think it is. At the cost of having sanctions imposed on India, which will hurt people. And already we are seeing some evidence of that in industries that have, which are facing a 50% tariff. People are losing jobs, you're losing your exports, you're losing market share. So you have to weigh the importance of Chabahar with the rest of the relationship with the United States. So, for example, while I agree that it provides us access to Central Asia, to Afghanistan, all of that, I cannot question that. But the fact is, what is your trade volume with Central Asia? It's $2 billion, maybe even less. Okay. Stack it up with your trade volume with the United States. That's what, 160, $200 billion. Are you going to say that my trade factor with Central Asia is so critical that I'm willing to defy the United States on this particular issue? I feel deeply offended by the bullying that the United States is doing. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at it pragmatically, the US can do it. And, we don't have much of an option on that. Unless, of course, we want to jeopardize everything else. That is one. Second, on the China factor. Look, Gwadar is a dead port. Gwadar is like Hambantota. Hambantota is an airport in which no plane comes. Gwadar is a port in which no ship goes, right? They've tried to force ships to go to Gwadar, no ship goes. Even the Chinese hardly use Gwadar port. And the Chinese are not going to use Gwadar for trade with Central Asia. Because the Chinese have direct routes to Central Asia. They may not use it,
but they are being controlled by China. There is an influence of China.
No, but look, the Gwadar are in the influence which the Chinese have on Gwadar or on Pakistan is we are nowhere near close that kind of influence just because we operate a port in Chabahar. It's just not the same thing because the Chinese have a defense relationship with the Pakistanis. They are deeply invested in Pakistan. Pakistan is deeply invested in China. We don't have that similar kind of a relationship as far as Iran is concerned. And anybody who has dealt with the Iranians know that they are pretty awkward customers to deal with.
But Mr. Dayal, now, given that situation, we have the proximity that's increasing between US and Pakistan as well. Then does it not become all the more important for us to protect what we have with Iran via Chabahar port?
But how do we protect it? When we were investing so much money, I was questioning why are we putting so much investment into the Chabahar port when the whole matter is fraught with risk?
Okay.
The US-Iran relationship has been tense for a long time, and Iran has been facing US sanctions. So in this sort of a geopolitical situation, where was the need for us to invest so much? Now the problem is we have put a lot of money into Chabahar, so we have to keep alive our interests. Had we not invested, the scenario would have been different. But we justified it because we need access through Iran to Central Asia. Of course, Mr. Sushant Sareen was absolutely right. Our trade with Central Asia is not that much. But we were thinking we'll develop it and have another route to Russia. But as a result, we invested so much of money, and now is that money going to go down the drain? That is the big question.
Well, we don't know whether India has decided to, exit this particular project, come out of it, let go of the investments for now, given the situation. We don't know, because right now we have time till April. We'll have to wait and see what happens. In diplomacy, of course, 4 months are quite long. Things can change overnight as well. So we'll, of course, be keeping a close eye on the developments. But for now, thank you very much, both of you gentlemen. Appreciate you joining us here on Times Now.